Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first Webinar Wednesday. I'm Judith Stahl, your webinar coordinator for this morning, and in a moment we will begin our presentation on an introduction to the Main Street approach. But first I have just a few housekeeping items. If you have any technical problems today, there is a link in your confirmation email to the GoToWebinar help page that may help you troubleshoot. Hopefully nobody will have any issues, but just in case. Today we will run approximately 45 minutes. We will stop about midway and at the end for some question and answer time. Please feel free to type in your questions as we go. If it's something I can answer along the way, I will. Otherwise, we'll address it when our speaker, Kim Parsons-Whitaker, gets to our question stops. There will be a PDF version of our presentation as well as a recording from today on our website, probably tomorrow. All of our webinars, in fact, will be recorded and put on our website, so you can always look there if you're looking for an interesting webinar. There will also be a brief survey at the end of today's session. We would greatly appreciate your input so that we can continue to improve these sessions. It should only take a minute or so. And now I will introduce our speaker for today, Connecticut Main Street Center's own Kim Parsons-Whitaker. But before she starts her presentation, I'm going to send you guys out a quick little poll. We're curious about who all is listening today. So we would like to know, what is your current role in your town's Main Street? And if you could just take a minute to click on one of these answers. I am a downtown management professional. I'm a municipal employee or economic development professional. I'm an excited volunteer. I'm a resident, or if you're something else that we haven't come up with, feel free to click other. This will just give us sort of an idea of who's out there and listening today, maybe skew some of our answers when we get to the questions. So it looks like people are getting most everybody's voted. Look, we have a nice crowd out there this morning. We appreciate you taking your time to attend today. I'm going to go ahead and close that and show everybody so you can all see who's listening. So there are a few that put yourselves into others, so I'll be curious if you wouldn't mind chatting me out how you would classify yourself. That might help us in the future to know who's out there. But I think this is very interesting, and thank you all. And now we will turn it over to Kim.
Great. Thank you, Judith, and good morning, everyone. So we're going to start today. Let me just give a little orientation to what it is that we are going to cover. Today's webinar is going to provide an overview of the Main Street program. It is introductory. I know that some of you are very familiar with the Main Street program, but there are others whose names I did not recognize, and so this is sort of a grounding in the Main Street program and how Connecticut Main Street Center works with communities. We are going to talk a little bit about the history, the forces and trends that changed downtown and that informed how the Main Street program started, why it was developed, and how it's organized. But before we go there, let me start with a brief introduction to Connecticut Main Street Center. Our mission is to be the catalyst that ignites Connecticut's main streets as the cornerstones of thriving communities. We are a nonprofit, statewide resource for education, for technical assistance, and advocacy on behalf of Connecticut's main streets. And those main streets, as you can see in this image, include town centers, urban downtowns and neighborhood mixed-use districts, as well as small village centers. The Connecticut Main Street Network extends throughout the state, and this network includes professionally managed downtowns and neighborhood districts. It also includes municipal planning and economic development departments and 2 regional organizations representing the interests of many towns. And in 2016, we started a professional affiliate membership program for industry professionals, and we have about 20 professional affiliates that specialize in everything from marketing to economic development to urban planning, preservation, transportation, responsible growth, and more. So at Connecticut Main Street Center, excuse me, we offer education and networking, advocacy, and increased visibility for Connecticut's downtowns, mixed-use urban neighborhoods, and village centers. Our educational offerings and networking events include half-day workshops that explore topics in depth, usually with guest speakers. And if you can't attend those, we post all presentations on our website. We also hold late-day networking events in partnership with CEDAS, the Connecticut Economic Development Association. And those are hosted by a variety of different downtowns in Connecticut. We have our new Bridge series that we introduced last year, and those are members-only information sharing events, usually on a Friday morning, about 2 hours in length with a healthy dose of networking. And then our Main Street Open House events, and these are hosted by our professional affiliate members. Our website, which is ctmainstreet.org, has a wealth of information, and we have an active social media presence via Facebook and Twitter. Specifically on our website, I would call your attention to our member resources page. We introduced, for instance, one feature of this is we introduced a new member communications kit in the fall, and in it you'll find guidance and examples of how to write press releases, using online programs for newsletters and infographics. We also have an education and resource page that provides links to hundreds of sites organized by category. And then we post regularly of Main Street activity all over Connecticut on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. We also have a monthly newsletter that comes out the 15th of each month. So if you don't receive that, I believe it's called our Downtown Update, please let us know and we'll make sure that we get you on the list to receive that. And I would be remiss if I did not mention our sponsors. As a statewide nonprofit organization, we rely on our sponsor partners to invest in Main Street revitalization and in our programs. Our founding sponsors are Eversource and the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. And our growth sponsors are UIL Holdings Corporation and Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office. And then these webinars are part of our educational programming, which we call our Main Street Forums for the 21st Century. And those sponsors you can see right here: Webster Bank Foundation, New Alliance Foundation, UIL Holdings Corp., Pullman and Cumley LLC, Fuss and O'Neill, CDM Smith, and the Connecticut Economic Resource Center. So now into the meat of our program right here. Sort of a little bit of background on why the Main Street program started. Historically, our main streets have been the center of community life, vibrant downtowns with a mix of uses, most often retail and dining on the ground floors, residential and office on the upper floors, and then within a vibrant downtown also government institutions, City Hall, our post offices, libraries, our houses of worship. And then the multimodal transportation aspect. This wonderful photograph from Lower Chapel Street in the 1920s in New Haven shows examples of, in their heyday, multimodal transportation, streetcar, trolley, automobile, people on bicycles, people on foot. However, there were forces and trends that changed the course of Main Street in the mid-20th century. And these can roughly be organized in the following three ways. Number one, regulatory changes. 20th century zoning separated uses, creating barriers to having a successful mixed-use downtown. Now, originally intended to protect public health, the unintended consequences of this separation resulted in a loss of vibrancy in many downtowns. This was followed by the automobile, the accessibility of getting from coast to coast very easily through the National Highway Act of 1956, which provided people with the ability to move to the suburbs. But many of these highways cut a swath through our downtowns. In Connecticut, we see this in Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, New Britain, Waterbury, and many more places. And then the third component, urban renewal. In the mid-20th century, as people moved to new suburban development, retail followed people. Retail always follows people. And in misguided efforts to make downtown more appealing to the mall shoppers of the mid-20th century, decisions were made to demolish and compromise the downtown historic fabric, often to create surface parking lots. This urban renewal was a reflection of our USA culture that newer is better. So, in the late 1970s, the National Trust for Historic Preservation developed a pilot program designed to address the neglect and demolition of historic downtowns. They discovered through this pilot program that downtowns had lost their value in these four distinct areas. We had lost our civic value, our physical value, our social value, and our economic value. So the Main Street approach that we're about to talk about was developed to address the restoration of these values simultaneously. It is both comprehensive and incremental, and is intended to be a framework guiding revitalization efforts. So we're going to take a few moments to explore this framework further. Organization, restoring civic value. This is about engaging the community, about convening public and private sectors, and working toward consensus around bringing Main Street back to life. This involves developing and maintaining partnerships and engaging our local institutions and leaders. And it usually also involves employing communications and public relations strategies in order to reach out to these communities. The organization function is all about community engagement. So very often I will ask a community, do you have or have you engaged a local university or a community college? Are there other anchor institutions, either a hospital or a major employer? These anchors are sources of expertise of possible downtown residents and customers, and certainly of potential partners and volunteers for your revitalization program. Number two, design is about restoring physical value. It's about getting the district in top physical shape and ensuring that downtown is well planned, physically welcoming and accessible, and attractive. This involves the components of the design point are historic preservation, design guidelines, facade programs, also includes pedestrian orientation in the downtown, wayfinding and signage, and information systems that help both residents and visitors know where certain features of downtown are, including parking areas. The design component also includes beautification projects and placemaking and programming public spaces, and it includes the planning aspect of downtown, streetscape plans, traffic and parking management plans, and overall master planning for downtown. So the Main Street design function is about planning, preservation, adaptive reuse, particularly with a focus on bringing the upper floors in buildings back online for residential use. It's about clean, well-lit sidewalks, street trees, and public spaces. It's about attractive and welcoming storefronts that fit within the context of your unique downtown. And it's about complete streets for all users, not just automobiles, but also pedestrians, bicycles, strollers, wheelchairs. Its complete streets are streets for people of all ages and all abilities. The third point of the Main Street approach is promotion, about restoring social value to downtown. It's about promoting the district's unique characteristics and assets. So it begins with developing your brand based on an understanding of your market, your demographics, and the community's purchasing habits. And it's about events and programming that create a unique sense of place and bring people downtown. And then it's also about destination marketing and retail events and promotions that promote the district as a whole and help businesses understand how they can attract customers. Restoring social value begins with an understanding of your audience and then creating programming that positions downtown as a destination. And then the fourth point of the Main Street approach, restoring economic value. This is about enhancing and diversifying the district's economic base. It begins with working relationships with downtown property and business owners. So we're looking at business retention, first of all, making sure the businesses that are here are healthy and vibrant. In Main Street management programs, sometimes that involves providing workshops or one-on-one counseling for businesses or technical assistance. It also involves the ease of the regulatory process for business and property owners, making sure that City Hall or Town Hall views business owners and property owners as their customers. You're very customer oriented. You've made sure that the regulatory process is clearly stated. And then it also involves engaging property owners in redevelopment and adaptive reuse strategies and plans for mixed-use buildings. We talk about preservation as important, but preservation and the adaptive reuse of these buildings for the 21st century. So improving the economic vitality of downtown begins with understanding your market. You have to know your numbers. Who lives in town? What do they purchase and where? We can involve businesses in getting this information. For instance, do businesses capture zip codes from their customers? So they know where their customers are coming from. They know who the residents are that might be shopping there, as well as people from out of town. And if you're doing events in downtown, do you take the opportunity to capture information from event attendees? Like how far did they travel to attend an event, and what would they like to do on their return visits? Other numbers that are important, very critical information. Do you have an up-to-date inventory of downtown buildings and businesses? Do you know what you have? And then, are you missing out on a vibrant downtown economy simply because the upper floors of downtown buildings are vacant? Remember, retail always follows people. If people aren't living in downtown, your small businesses are going to suffer. So, in review, this Main Street approach to revitalization is all about restoring value to downtown, comprehensively and incrementally.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to interrupt you right here, and we're going to ask you another question. Having now a little bit of background about the four-point approach, we're curious about which of the 4 points you think will be the biggest challenge in your downtown. So again, if you could take a moment to just click on one of these options. The first point is organization, restoring civic value. Then design, restoring physical value. Promotion, restoring social value. And economic vitality, restoring economic value. So if you can just take a minute to click in on one of those choices, it gives us sort of an idea of where you're at, where your towns might be at, what kind of help you might be looking for in the future. And we're just starting this webinar series, so we are also looking for topics and what people might find interesting going forward. I'm going to give just another minute or so everyone can get back to their poll page and click on an option. But now it looks like the majority of people have answered. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And you can see, as you might expect, economic vitality is certainly on the top of the list, although there are concerns all across the board, which is why this process hits all 4 points and is incremental. Now, we're going to keep going with our presentation. I'd like you to sort of keep in mind what you were just thinking about when I asked this question. And we're going to look a little bit at the resources that already exist within your town that can help start to address some of these challenges.
Good. Thank you, Judith, and thanks to all of you who are participating in that poll, because it really does help us get more specific, both in this webinar, but particularly in webinars in the future. So there is overwhelming evidence that bringing Main Street back to life requires a coalition of public and private sector leaders. It isn't just City Hall's job to bring downtown back to life. It really is a public-private partnership. So using the four-point approach as an organizing tool, you can begin to think about your natural partners, that's individuals and organizations, that can easily play a role in Main Street revitalization. Organized under the four-point grid, I've identified those organizations and institutions in towns and in regions that have the capacity, usually, to bring people together to address the issues that have been identified in any community. These are generic examples. Your own community has these and probably many more. I will take a moment to point out that one of the things I usually mention when I'm out in the field speaking with specific communities, very often the faith-based community is overlooked as a potential partner and player. If we think about, and the reason why I've put it under point number 1 about civic engagement, community engagement, is that the faith-based community, by its very nature and its very mission, brings people together. So there's a captive audience of people who care about their community in some way. And so utilizing some of the dynamic people involved in the faith-based community in your own town or city can help bring people to the table. Likewise, using the state, university, a college system, community college system, that brings people together, but it's also a wonderful source of expertise in any one of the 4 points. So certainly a number of our communities have involved college or university students as economic development interns or as planning interns, or interns that maybe start up and run an entire social media program for the downtown. So I think this is a worthwhile exercise using this 4-point grid to start to jot down who are some of the players, both individuals and organizations, that can be part of this partnership in bringing your own downtown back to life. So, opportunity for questions here.
Yes, Kim, we have one good question from Bill. He asks, do you believe that the internet has caused further damage to traditional small town businesses such as toy stores, small drugstores, etc.?
Good question, Bill. I think there's no doubt that the impact on small business from the internet, obviously this has been going on for a number of years, but it's only getting more acute. It creates a challenge for small businesses. There's absolutely no doubt. But the small businesses that tend to do well through that challenge are those that embrace the internet as a tool in their own business, in their own marketing of their business, as well as customer service. So as I've gone around the state, those businesses that are not using the internet as a tool are suffering certainly more. Everybody's on the internet now, and I think probably the majority of people that are participating in this webinar at one point or another today will take out their cell phones to find something, whether it's where they're going to go to dinner tonight or whether they're going to tie into an experience or an event, maybe that's something they want to do over the weekend. Everybody is doing that. And so one of the things that I know through, whether it's the Connecticut Small Business Development Center or other resources for small businesses, they can help businesses understand how to use the internet for their own good, for the success of their own businesses. Good question. One of the questions that I'm asked very often when I'm out doing a presentation is how do we get potential partners to the table? If we're just exploring this Main Street revitalization conversation in our community, how do we get people to participate? I find very often that very few true leaders, whether they have that title or not, in a community will resist a personal invitation from the mayor or the top elected official. So I always feel it's very important for your top elected official to really understand what the issues are in a downtown and how the community can be involved in helping to address those issues. So very often an invitation from a top elected official, or again, some of the faith-based leaders, or some of the anchors in your downtown, the president of a community college. They can get the ball rolling by simply inviting people to the table and then having, whether it's a presentation like this or a facilitated community conversation about downtown, can be very, very helpful. Do we have other questions? Let's see. Let me throw out another one that I get. How do I help small business owners understand that downtown events are a good thing? This is a hot button issue very often. Those of you that are out on the front lines managing your downtown, or if you're economic development directors, you will invariably hear an earful from certain small business owners that these events are a pain in the neck, they're not good for business, plus all these people are taking up parking spaces directly in front of my store. It's a really difficult one. I can feel some people smiling or gritting their teeth through my laptop at this question. It really involves, and I've talked with a lot of people that are on the front lines managing a downtown, it really does take one-on-one conversation with business owners to open their eyes to the fact that this one day, this one event, we might have 1,000 people in our downtown or 10,000 people in our downtown, depending upon the event. And that this is a captive audience. So while there's a parade going on and people literally might have their backs to your storefront is there. At some point they're going to turn around. And so whether it's making sure that you're not inside your store, you or maybe a couple of staff people are out handing out leaflets or talking people up, providing them with your website, how to get in touch with you, your Facebook page. It is all about proactively marketing your business through that event. You've got a captive audience right there. So it is a question that comes up often. It does take, though, some coaching of small businesses.
I think that probably wraps up our question session for right now. We'll take more questions at the end. Again, as Kim's doing the second half of our presentation, if you have some more questions, feel free to type them in.
Good, good. Thank you for those questions. Definitely keep them coming. So, Main Street utilizes a preservation and place-based economic development strategy. So, what I mean by that is the revitalization of your downtown, your Main Street, is built around its unique natural and built environment. We find that most communities have plenty of plans and studies that have been done. But these plans and studies often lack the capacity and organizational infrastructure to implement the recommendations. So you've got a lot of great ideas, but who's going to implement them is always a big question. The Main Street approach, this 4-point approach, provides you with an organizing structure. It helps keep you focused, around which your own unique plan of action is developed. And I'll take this opportunity to promote our next webinar, which is on February 15th. We're going to explore the mechanics of how to develop your own Main Street action plan. This statement here is vitally important to us at Connecticut Main Street Center. Main Street districts must be managed in some way. And the analogy we use, strangely enough, is a shopping mall. much like a shopping mall has a management company which ensures its success, experience shows that downtown needs comprehensive management. In Connecticut, as you saw previously in that map of the Main Street network, we have a number of professionally managed downtowns. But most communities really start with this partnership of municipal staff, a chamber or a business association, and the anchors in the community, major employers, colleges, other anchor institutions, as well as arts organizations and more. The Main Street program really builds coalitions around bringing downtown back to life. A healthy Main Street begins by addressing quality of life issues, so that we are always starting by ensuring that downtown is clean and welcoming. I've had wonderful encounters with Main Street communities that when they come to the realization that they have to redefine public safety issues, such as inappropriate social behavior or blighted building conditions, as economic development issues. In other words, investment isn't going to happen if the district is not welcoming, if it's not clean. If there's trash on the sidewalk, investment is probably going to go in an opposite direction. And that we have visual elements and amenities that make people feel welcome in downtown, that help people know where they're going once they get there. And that we're also ensuring a healthy business environment. So while we're improving the facades of buildings, we're also paying attention to what's happening behind the front door of that building. We're guiding business owners to the resources they need to be successful. At Connecticut Main Street Center, we believe that vibrant, sustainable Main Streets and healthy communities depend on having this full range of outstanding components. We call them our healthy half dozen, which includes economics, transportation, sustainability, stewardship, place, and inclusiveness. So within each of these components, we've identified several key ingredients. For instance, under economics, that includes healthy small businesses. It includes jobs. It includes housing. Once again, having people living in a downtown is critical to the economic success of a downtown. Sustainability includes smart growth policies and procedures, includes public health initiatives, and environmental awareness. For our communities and for Connecticut as a whole to compete in the 21st century and beyond, we must attract, retain, and nurture the talent that will fuel this information age economy. And what this population really craves is to live in authentic, walkable, dynamic, connected places. That's Main Street. That's our town centers. So as you put together your action plan for Main Street, we encourage you to keep this healthy half dozen in mind. So, an opportunity for more questions.
Yeah, we can stop again for more questions. If anybody wants to type some in, we're happy to hear them. I think Kim wanted to talk a little bit about where some of your numbers might come
Right. This is a question, you know, when I've talked a good deal about make sure you know your numbers. So where do we learn about our numbers? Many of you, again, in looking at the attendee sheet for today, many of you work for municipalities, so you probably know a good deal about where you can find certain numbers, and many of you are probably members of the Connecticut Economic Resource Center. So that's always a great place to start. For those of you in municipalities, Courtney Hendrickson is the VP of Municipal Services, so she's always a great resource. Related to CERC and within their own offices is the Connecticut Data Collaborative. And you can Google them. They have a wonderful website, and they're a fantastic source of information about where you can learn about your own numbers.
And I'm sending out in the chat pane some contact information for these sources.
Yes, absolutely.
And we will also add this to the PDF version of this presentation on our website.
Good, good. And then a third resource is Yukon Extension, their community economic development program run by Laura Brown, and she'll be on that sheet also. They do, as a matter of fact, they did a wonderful workshop on market studies for downtowns. So those three organizations are really, really key for Connecticut communities.
Excellent. So I think that we have come to the end of our presentation for today. I thank you all for coming. I would remind you all that our next webinar is next month, February 15th at 11 o'clock again. We will discuss more of the mechanics of developing your Main Street Action Plan. We encourage you to invite your partners and local volunteers who might be involved in your revitalization efforts. A recording of today's webinar, along with that PDF version of Kim's presentation, will be on our website at ctmainstreet.org. We encourage you to visit that website, where you can find a great deal more information no matter what stage of revitalization you are in. And with that, I will just say thank you for attending today. Please help us by completing the survey that you will receive as you exit our webinar today. And we'd also love to see you on social media. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Have a great day.